if people don't make a move, to your point, Brian, this is turning into a renter nation. And unfortunately for those who have waited, there's many who just don't qualify anymore and the train has left the station for them. But there's others where the boxcart dream house has left the station, but they could still jump on and catch back up. And if they don't, they're going to be stuck renting as well in a renter nation, because this whole country is changing.
Welcome to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, and you want to learn some of the insider secrets and uncensored truths from the true professionals in and around real estate, you've come to the right place. Now, let's buckle up for the uncensored truth about real estate and join your host, Brian Cardenas.
All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. You guys that are watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel so you can get notified. Put the notifications button on there so you can find out when we've got new episodes coming your way. We do this weekly, and today I wanted to bring back a friend of mine, not back. Maybe he'll come back later if we do a good job today. To the podcast here. His name is Sosi Avila. Sosi, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Brian. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully I'll be able to come back too.
I don't know. You're going to have to pass the test. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it depends on how uncensored you can be on this. I almost came on without a shirt, but I was like, you know what? That's probably not good for the audience.
Well, you know, I haven't tried it yet. I don't know. We'll maybe try it. No, probably not. My wife would kill me.
You and I probably shouldn't try that.
Yeah, I think we want people to watch. I mean, that would repel them away. We'd have like 0 viewers after that. Well, tell everybody a little bit about your history and your background and where you're at and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so a little bit about me is I grew up with two parents who immigrated over here to the U.S. They taught me how to be a really hard worker and how to give the shirt off your back for someone else in need. And with those learning lessons, I got into the pastoral world, and I ended up being a pastor at the church and organization that I served at. And as I was continuing to just grow in that space, one of the things I just started seeing around was so many of the problems that people were just going through in life came from misses. I just didn't know what those misses were. And I also started seeing that there was a lot of people who had such great hearts that love people deeply. I had a person at our church who loved us so much. I mean, I could never fault the guy for that. But when it came to helping my family with our real estate and finance needs, he had great intentions, but terrible advice. And without, ill motive, put us into a scenario where, we lost the house we grew up in. My mom had a lot of financial hardship after that. And I started having this conviction and desire to bring some change. And so when I left the pastoral role and I came into mortgage finance, I came in with a massive conviction to start a practice that actually helped people get the help that my family deserved but didn't have. So not just care and good intent, but advice and guidance. And so, Brian, you and I met that first year when I got licensed, and I remember just learning so much from you and just respecting the hell out of how you direct consumers and how you advise them. And you helped simplify a big fear for me. And you just said, look, the loan part is not difficult. That is easy. The difficult part is being able to guide somebody with the correct information so they can make better decisions. And so on that, conversation, I've had such different endeavors trying to just make sure to take that advice to fullness. And I've seen it proven. The loan piece is not difficult, right? Any mortgage monkey can get a loan originated and closed, and they should be able to close it on time, right? But being able to have true advice that changes the life of someone's the life of their grandchild, being able to give advice like that's a different story. So a little bit about me. Started in the industry about 6 years ago. After 3 years, I was top 1% in the country. Last year, we hit a really great number. We're right there, right underneath the 100 million mark. Or about 94 million. We helped over 170 families, and we've been able to coach a lot of people nationwide, but most of all, just find people like yourself where we can just join in arms and try to help the consumer get better information.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've respected about you is that that's your passion. You know, some people get into the business for everybody's got their own reason. Sometimes it's money motivated. You know, sometimes it's status or what have you. Sometimes it's just taking care of their family, and nothing wrong with that. Like everybody's got their
Yeah.
own reason, but I love the education piece of what you bring to the table, and that's a lot of why I try to do this. There's people out
Yeah.
doing podcasts all the time, and there's a lot of podcasts that are talking to each other in the industry. And
Mm.
while those things are good, I think those can be super helpful. I wanted to do something different and try to speak to the consumer and bring something to them that would be helpful. And so in that mindset, like what is the most common thing that you see on the consumer side that they just don't understand about real estate or mortgage that you really try to take upon yourself to educate them on, and enlighten them about?
Yeah, one of the biggest components that I've seen a lot is just preconceived notions that are fueled by bad experiences, right? And I guess one of the best ways to be able to share that is, my mom looked at me with the amount of homes I own, and she just stared at me with genuine concern, and she just goes, "Mijo, how are you how are you able to pay all those mortgage payments? Or do you just make like millions of dollars?" And there could have been an easy answer there, but the answer that clicked the best in my head was, "Mom, I don't make the payments, my tenants do." And being able to help somebody have that corrective lens going, that's right. If you're able to leverage and create a different perspective here because of what's really going on, right? Every every initial view can seem scary, but if you actually learn how to view it in the right way, that fear can dissipate and opportunity can be clearly seen. And so that's been the biggest thing with consumers and clients that I've had conversations with is going, okay, I get we have, for lack of better term, and this is no disrespect to those who really deal with this from an intense standpoint, right? I used to be an intern chaplain, so I want to be very sensitive to this topic. But to those who have types of PTSD, again, for a lack of better term, because they've not heard how an arm works well or how HELOCs can empower you to be able to have the capital needed to acquire properties, or they haven't heard how 2-1 temporary buy downs or any of those components can actually be a good thing. And in and of themselves, mortgage products are not bad because they have no nature to them, right? They're not bad. They could just be used incorrectly. When you see people's first reactions to all those, right, you have to deconstruct even what the idea of a mortgage is and many of the different products that come with it. So the most common piece is deconstructing just that PTSD click that they have from preconceived notions that have been passed on to them.
What would you say and that happens a lot with people that have owned a home in the past, and people that went through the Great Recession back in 2007, 2008, they lost a home, they got put in a bad loan product. I mean, absolutely, they have a bad experience and it's really
Yeah.
hard to unwind that. But let's say for the person who has never owned a home, like
Yeah.
what is the best piece of advice that you can give aside from just buy a home? Like to get
Yeah.
to that point where they can buy a home, like what's the best advice that you like to give people who are planning to buy their first home?
Yeah, I would say even there, right? I think those people have the hardest preconceived notions and need to be deconstructed, right? Because what has happened is you have now viewed everything from a third party expert. It's like, who are the most expert parents? Those who haven't had children yet, right? If you want to ask them advice, they have their own decisions already created of what is the best parenting style, and they have no clue how it operates. And so for a first time home buyer, many times you just look at even the difference of what a first-time home buyer looks like comparatively in this generation from the past. In the past, first-time home buyers would be, Brian, show me your accolades, give me your certifications, tell me your years of experience. And all these things were actually additives to building trust. My generation doesn't give a crap about that, right? When I see all these certifications from someone, I'm like, cool. What do you really know? Like my generation now goes, show me that you know more than what I've researched on Google, and now we can have a conversation. And so with first-time home buyers, it's being able to understand that our first piece is going to be meeting them where they're at and what fears are sourcing them to even say maybe it's not a good time to buy a home. And so it's finding those pillars. And so one of the main pillars that really come into that deconstruction phase is being able to show how current market prices are similar in some ways to 2008 prices, but the market itself is very different, right? That is one of the most common concepts to talk through. The other concept that I've seen most popular is having a lower down payment. And the third category would be helping somebody understand how the concept of mortgage, right? There are there is kind of an initial period where you typically have a price increase or a payment increase from what you're used to from a rental standpoint, but it's short term, right? Typically, that mortgage payment will be getting lessened by either mortgage insurance being removed, by refinancing into a lower interest rate, or it's just going to be getting less because it never moves. And inflation will cause the rent to go higher. And being able to show someone that that initial investment of short term pain strategize the right way where they're still safe can be the best long-term gain that they can be looking for. So those three components are the big piece, right? Market, down payment, and actually monthly payment.
Yeah, and the short term view is probably a really hard thing to get past, because that's kind of how society operates now. It's like, you get tunnel vision, you want something, it's the immediacy, and not thinking long term. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about what you do, and we try to do the same thing, is get people to step back for a minute and see the big picture. Let's think about, where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and let's make sure that we put the right strategy in place today to help make sure that you get there.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes a little bit challenging for people, because they're so used to just thinking, about tomorrow or today. And so what can you do to help somebody like get past that? Is it conversation? Is it illustration? What are the tools that you use to kind of help educate people and get them to see big picture?
Yeah, I love that you threw in that clarifier at the end, right? Like what tools, because every craftsman knows that whatever project he's working on, his success comes in from having the right tools for that project. And so if the consumer is really scared on market, that's when we go into created presentations. And Brian, I know you have very similar stuff to it, right? But I have a recorded YouTube presentation I did called you can find it at www.marketupdatewithsosi.com, and it's me literally just going through the talking points of where the market is and what needs to be done. And it was done more for real estate professionals, both the mortgage and the real estate side. And what I do there to try to help people learn how to change their view on what's going on from what they're assuming is going on and what is reality of what's going on, right, is go through 9 talking points from an analysis standpoint of where the market truly is from a health piece today. Then from there, using tools, and now to hit those other categories of maybe their fear is down payment or payment itself from a monthly standpoint, using tools like Mortgage Coach to then illustrate. Let's stop just assuming that you're making the decision between the mortgage payment and your rent. That's really not what's going on. That's one of the decisions. But the next one is you're making your decision of what will the mortgage payment be in the future if you decide to make a move, and or what will the rent be in the future if you don't decide to make a move. And being able to help people remember that we are such creatures that like to make decisions assuming all variables are fixed. We have to understand life, inflation, economy, right? All variables are not fixed. And showing that through illustrative means of going, okay, let's say market trends are correct and now prices go up by X percent and rates go up by X percent. Now let's say rates go down and the market price goes up, and prices go down but rates go up, right? And if you play out these scenarios for people, now it changes from let me just try to convince you to do something emotionally okay for you to let me show you the knowledge itself and let the knowledge empower you to make your own decision. If at the end of that conversation you go, you know what, I feel like it's a mitigated risk and I'm rolling my dice on a market crash that's going to go down by 40% and rates are going to be lower, all power to you. As long as you know what you're gambling, do what you want, right? But most people, once they look at the data, they go, holy crap, I need to make a move sooner than later because the odds are not in my favor.
So tell the audience, in terms of what we see in the market today, Today we're recording, what are we, the 17th of November.
Yep.
The fear that we hear a lot, especially I see on social media, people reacting and commenting to stuff that I put out there, telling me that I'm an idiot, that home prices are going to drop by 40%.
Yeah.
Tell me where you feel that we're headed and some of that data that we look at to support your opinion.
Yeah, one of the things I'm super fascinated by, and I think this is why theology was such a big part for me, is I'm just fascinated by human nature, right? I'm a student of what causes people to do what they do. And so a few of the components that I'd put in there as well, right, is right now everyone is looking at even current data and they're saying, okay, there's this massive haul, all these things, which obviously affordability has caused the market to tremendously change.
Yeah.
Yet also knowing human nature, there's a sticker price shock, right? And so there takes time to be able to get used to what the new aspect is. Again, affordability from a qualifying standpoint, that's a different story. If you can't qualify, then there's nothing else that you can do. If it's an affordability standpoint, then there's some room for renegotiation. And so, number one, let's say everything stays the same. My belief is not it will all stay as bad as it is right now, right? Because there's a time that has to be allotted for this new, if this becomes a new normal, to actually exist, right? And there has to be a correction in that. And so that's the first point. The second point to your question, what will happen or what is happening right now, right? Right now, what has taken place is we have still extremely low foreclosure rates, right? And what else has taken place is that the average consumer or the average homeowner across the country has hit $300,000 in equity. What has taken place is that if prices nationwide drop by 5%, that now creates 148,000 houses that are underwater, right? 140,000 nationwide. And we are in a position where the amount of households being formed right now, right? Those that are coming to the age of needing a home for their own families because they're too damn old to stay with their parents, right? This is going to be a bigger number than the generation before us, right? You went from baby boomers having high consuming numbers of products to, the last generation, and now it goes to us, and we are more than the generation before us. So that means that millennials are going to be needing to consume more than what's actually available on the table. So if there is a 5% drop and 148,000 houses are underwater, assuming each one of those 148,000 go on the market, there's still not enough homes to be able to satisfy the consumer needs. And keep this in mind, right? Like, let's even put that off the table and not even look at the supply and demand off balance. But think about it, right? There's no domino effect. Right now, with the amount of consumers that have so much equity in their home, they don't have reason to sell it for a 40% haircut, especially if they're sitting on an interest rate with a 2 or 3 in front of it, and their current mortgage payment is less than what it would be to rent that same house in their neighborhood. Why the hell would anybody drop their equity, sell their house for a lower price point, and exchange a lower cost of living for a higher one? It's just not in the cards. So that's what's happening. What will happen is, as this bubble keeps growing, as far as this demand piece, as soon as those rates trickle down to a place where FOMO can now kick in, I think we're going to see some more bidding wars. I hope and pray it's not going to be out of control like it was in the last 2 years, because that is going to cause a whole nother issue in and of itself. But it's going to come. And my dream for the economy is that we could just stabilize and see a 4% growth, across the board, not these crazy double digits that are just not healthy for any economy or government.
You want to buy a house, but high interest rates have got you down? Take the rate challenge and send us a verifiable loan estimate from another lender, and we'll beat it and pay for your appraisal up to $600. Here at Give Mortgage, being powered by U Mortgage allows us to provide you with unmatched speed and efficiency and the best rates and fees in the market, all while delivering you the concierge level service you deserve. We want you to have an experience getting a mortgage that you'll never forget, and not because you got put through a meat grinder to get it. At Give Mortgage, we give great advice, we give the best rates, and we give back to charity. Visit us at www.give-mortgage.com or call us at 480-331-4684 to schedule a free consultation to see how we can help. Yeah, I think it's a really good point you just touched on at the end there, that we hear the other thing besides the housing crash, concern is, I'm just going to wait. And it may not be because their fear of a housing crash, but it's, I want to wait for interest rates to come down. But like you said, when I try to explain to people, I said, just look back a little bit. We try to look forward all the time, but you have to look back to kind of see how did we get to where we're at. And all the factors that you talked about, the shortage of housing supply, the more population that's getting to the age where they want to buy their first home. And every time we have a first time buyer, they're taking another piece of inventory off the market because they're not selling another property.
Yep.
Builders still not building enough to keep up with supply. All of those factors were there prior to the pandemic hitting.
Yep.
And what the pandemic did is it put it all, through lighter fluid on the fire, because now let's take interest rates down from 4 or 5% and just put them down to 2 or 3. And that created that crazy demand that pushed prices up. So now the only thing that stopped it is interest rates going up.
Yeah.
Everybody's just sitting on the sideline waiting for things to calm down a little bit. I mean, there's hedge funds that were out there buying, institutional buyers buying tons of houses, turning them into rentals, which takes another property permanently out of the housing supply because they don't typically sell them. They just keep them for long-term rentals. So we still have all these things sitting there, and there's just a little bit of delay on the demand because of interest rates. And so, like, people that are thinking about waiting, always tell them, like, obviously you got to be able to qualify, you've got to be able to afford the payment. But if you can get a better deal right now, which I don't know in your market, we're definitely seeing some better deals available for people. Get that better deal, fix the interest rate later. Like, your interest rate, you're not going to keep it for 30 years. No one ever does. So afford what you can afford, get that deal, get into something, avoid all that competition. Because I agree with you. When those rates come down, I think even 1.5%, I think we're going to start to see some increased demand. Like, applications have been going up, just in the last week since we had that rate decrease last week. So I think it's a big point for people to keep in mind is understand why we're where we're at today, and don't put yourself back in that situation that we were in, a year ago by sitting around and waiting.
Yeah. And two things to kind of share there. Number one, when when I look at who loves me more than my family, I would argue that it's the first time home buyers that I quote unquote convinced to buy in 2016. Like, there's so many first time home buyers I remember talking with, and they're scared. Yeah, I don't know if we can cuss on this podcast or not, but they're scared to death, right, of like making this move, and their parents are very not for it. They've pulled down payment funds from them. They really don't want them to do it. And now those same people, right? I'm having annual financial review calls with these guys. They're 200 plus in equity, some even $500,000. Their mortgage payment is far less than their other friends who did listen to their parents. They have tapped into the equity as a source of emergencies through a HELOC, so that if they ever need it for whatever life throws their way, they're ready. And they're just doing fantastic, right? Like, those guys love us.
You're the hero now.
Yeah. And all I did was stuff that you and I have always tried to do. You just give information to let people make a well-informed decision, right? One of the biggest things I learned as a pastor, and one of my professors taught me this, he just looked at us all in the room, these prideful, eager, young zealots, right? And he just goes, hey, if you think that you can solve somebody's life problems by an hour of a counseling session, please take a look at yourself in the mirror and humble yourself a little bit. Right? Like, no one can solve somebody's life decisions. And when you talk about buying a home, this is a life altering move. My job is not to make somebody do it or not do it. My job is to give an adult the information they need so they can process it for themselves and make a well-informed decision. Right? That's all it is. And so to that was the first point. Right. And, the second point is diving a bit more even into some of the rawness here. It's fun to not just help people get past it, but give what you preach to yourself. I had to learn how to take a chance on myself. I had to take, lessons from men like you who just said, "Hey, Sosi, you have something that you can believe in. You have a talent, you have a skill." And I was scared when I first started off. I'm always scared in every endeavor I'm going to do, but having this reaffirmation and this acceptance going, it can be done and going for it, I mean, it's life changing. So not only have I built a fantastic business that supports me and my team members, which I'm really, really proud of and grateful for, but we've also taken real estate endeavors through the advice we give. And it's really amazing because the reality is, if people don't make a move, to your point, Brian, this is turning into a renter nation. And unfortunately, for those who have waited, there's many who just don't qualify anymore, and the train has left the station for them. But there's others where the boxcart dream house has left the station, but they could still jump on and catch back up. And if they don't, they're going to be stuck renting as well in a renter nation, because this whole country is changing.
Yeah, the amount of institutional buyers and even builders now that are building to rent,
Yeah.
it feels like it's by design. They've seen the
Yep.
opportunities that are there for having these long-term rentals, and keeping people in a position where they're going to rent for the foreseeable future. They don't have a problem with it because it definitely benefits them. It's not in the interest of the individual, and it's frustrating because when how so many people are able to build their wealth and pass it on to generations is through real estate.
Yeah.
And to see that
Very
opportunity pass
impressive.
people by because they're not making informed decisions or listening to the media who's trying to scare them away. I mean, we've got, the Grant Cardones and people of the world telling us that, owning a home is the stupidest thing you can do. That stuff just, I don't even understand where it comes from, other than, are we really trying to intentionally hold people down? Like,
Yeah.
it's frustrating.
I feel like there's a lot of hurt people, right, that are pointing fingers before they're doing all the research. And as smart as some people are, right, like by no means are there stupid people saying these things. They're very smart people saying it, but I just believe that they're smart in their field and they haven't had the right research presented to them on the others, right? Like I train financial advisors on a consistent basis now, and one of the biggest things that I've realized is that even the best financial advisors out there who know their stuff really well, they're pulling from dirty mortgage pools. So their information is tainted, right? They don't know about reverse mortgages being a good option. They don't know about strategies of utilizing a HELOC to get an Airbnb and then being able to use a cost segregation to save more money on taxes and be able to make sure that your estate plan has an actual transition to ensure that you get capital gains protected on your heirs, but then as well, you can potentially avoid things like in California where your heirs don't have to necessarily see that tax basis increase when they inherit the property, and now your cash flow goes away from your rental property, right? They don't know any of this stuff. And so being able to realize that there's a lot of smart people using bad information to make their conclusions, I think gives us some relief to have some empathy and go, okay, I understand why their perspectives are what they are. A lot of the false comparisons, which I get pissed off at, is when you hear a super rich person go, I don't know why people say real estate is so much better. I bought this $700,000 house cash, and if I would have left it in my stocks or blah blah blah, I would have made this much more money. Here it only made this much. It's like, because you missed the whole damn point of real estate. The point of real estate isn't to put all your cash into a property. It's called to leverage. You should have put $70,000 in that property and 630 into your portfolio. Now tell me who would have been more profitable, And so it's stuff like that will get me going. So I better be careful.
Get you preaching. So what do you see is some of the real opportunities that are in the market right now? If somebody's listening and wondering, hey, I think I might want to do something here. Maybe they already own a home. So I'm not talking about the first time
Yeah.
home buyers, because that's kind of an easy answer. But for
Yeah.
somebody that maybe owns a house right now, what do you see as some of the opportunities that are out there for people?
think somebody who owns a house right now, one of the first questions I have, and I love talking with either first time home sellers or homeowners who have been abandoned by their mortgage professionals, and they just need somebody to help them learn how to manage what they have. Right. And so what they have is this, right? You speak to a first time homeowner who's now owned a home for 2.5 years, and you go, hey, what is the value of your home? You think, oh, well, I think it's around, let's say, $700,000 for something in between your market and my market. How much do you own the home? Well, we bought it for like 500. So I think I'm at like 450. Great. Do you feel like you live your life as if you had $250,000 of capital associated to your name and your total net worth? No. I mean, I have like
No.
$2,000 in my savings. Like, I have a good retirement. My retirement account's like at 40 grand, but I don't want to look at it again because the market is tanked and we have 6 months reserves, but we don't touch that. But yeah, we don't live like we had 250. So then you just do some numbers for them and go, okay, let's talk about HELOCs. And I love talking about HELOCs, Brian, because I don't even freaking do them. And I don't ever do a referral fee type of relationship with another mortgage guy. And so I get to just refer them to just even the concept of a HELOC. And then we look at a HELOC and we go, okay, so if you use X amount of money from your HELOC, don't use it for vacation, don't use it for anything irresponsible. Let's talk about opportunities for wealth. Do you want to build an ADU out on your property? In California, that has become extremely easy in a lot of counties, right? Yet people are like, I don't have the money for that. Okay, cool. Then use a HELOC. Well, how am I going to afford the HELOC? Well, will the profit and the rent flow from the ADU cover the acquisition costs of the HELOC, which is an interest only payment, right? Would that be a positive cash flow? Yeah, that'd be positive. And it will allow me to pay more off towards principal. Cool. Right? Like that's a great opportunity now, right? Well, I've always been interested in a short-term rental. Sweet. Let's go to airdna.co. Let's look at projected short-term rental rates. Let's look at how much down payment you need to buy that second home or investment property. And let's look at leveraging this massive amount of money that you have now, quote unquote, walked into because you made a good decision to buy real estate. And let's see how it could work for you. If at anything, you just need to open up a HELOC so that if life happens, and this is a story of one of my clients from 2016, they bought a home. They lost their first one in the crash, so they're very hesitant. They then didn't have savings for the house. We did a half a down payment assistant loan for them in a high balance area. And they went into the home with pretty much nothing out of pocket. And 2 years later, we refinanced, paid off the second and the third mortgage because of the Calhafa products, refinanced where they got a lower rate and a better loan. And then from there, they tapped into a HELOC just for safety. And you know what took place? And God forbid this happens to anybody else, but she got diagnosed with cancer. They ended up going through a journey of fighting it. They had medical bills that came in. They had all these things that took place. And they were able to use funds from their home to just help them enjoy the last years of her life in a way that was not carrying as much financial burden and stress as it would have been without access to their own funds. And then from there, right, when she passed away, they're able to reconsolidate. And right now, long story short, they're in a fantastic place as far as for financial position. And now we're even talking about buying other investment properties, right? When you look at the opportunity of what a home can do to a family, it literally can break generational curses. It could change the lives of their heirs for the better, and it could provide them for a safety of living that they could not have as a renter in the same way. That's why I'm so passionate about this.
Yeah, it's not just a saying or a cliche that like you can actually change people's lives with what we do, and that to your point earlier, it comes with a lot of responsibility on our part, and
Yeah.
not everybody takes on that responsibility as they should, in my view.
Yeah.
But I know you're definitely one that takes that responsibility very seriously. So with somebody that's thinking about a first time purchase,
Yeah.
they've got some of those fears. The opportunities that I see now is that they were pretty much locked out of the market for the last 2 years because the only offers that were getting accepted were people that had loads of cash, either paying cash, offering to pay over cash, over list, over appraisal, and that's just not happening out here anymore.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity, don't you think, for people that are maybe they do need down payment assistance. I mean, there's down payment assistance out there, right?
Yeah.
The chance that you have to get into a property, I think, is just something that you can't ignore. Like you should not just listen to the fear, listen to the talking heads and the pundits on TV telling you that everything's going to crash and it's a bad idea. Because what are the things that you're seeing in your market with the first time home buyers? I mean, are you guys getting down payment assistance loans accepted? Like, what are the things that are happening in your area?
Yeah, I mean, we for one example, right? We did an FHA loan, close it quick, still all that stuff, right? Sellers still need an incentive. That's why they need good mortgage professionals like yourself helping them, right? Where you can be able to package a deal together on the offer in collaboration with your realtor and make sure that the seller's getting the incentives they need to make a deal happen. Because what it is right now, and what I think really lands true for people, is it's not just a definition of seller's market or buyer's market. What the definition is right now is opportunity market, right? And so if you can have that incentive created up front to the seller to play ball well, you can get some great stuff, right? Like this client that we closed, 17-day close, all that stuff to make the seller happy. But we ended up getting 6% concessions for the buyer. What that means in English, for anybody who doesn't know that terminology, right? It means we got that buyer a lot of money to use towards closing costs, to not quote to say it in the best way, to have parts of their mortgage payment paid for the first 2 years. Like, we set it up where this first time home buyer is able to enter into a house with so much relief and so much ease, with money still in their bank account, where last year this first time home buyer would have had to be able to, if they could have even been able to enter into it, they would have had to have entered in with a quarter to their name and their firstborn child now named after the seller. Like, the opportunity now is just fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think people don't understand, is there's a lot of creative ways to structure things to make the pain less right now, because we're all experiencing the pain of high prices, inflation, gas prices, food prices, and everything else. Talk about, let's give a little bit of color to some of the buy down things that are out there, because you'll also hear, if you pay attention to the media, or maybe some people in the industry, oh, that's terrible, this is good, this is bad. Shed some light on some of the tools that are out there at our disposal.
When you're talking about tools, you're talking about people who are negative Nancy's, or are you talking about like resources we can use?
Yeah, let's go smash some people.
Believe me, I get a lot of hate. At this point, it's been really funny because I get a lot of people now just hating on my hat and style instead of my content. I'm just like, okay, cool. So you don't have an argument there, but you're just going to take low blows. Got it. So the two of the biggest opportunities right now, other than having low down and still getting attention, right? No longer being the redheaded stepchild that gets overlooked, being able to be the princess of the ball, right? Like, you now have attention. With that attention, use it responsibly, right? So with that, there's two major opportunities for most individuals that they can try to leverage. And it's, how do you use the seller credit? Because for anybody who does math well or knows basic math, they'll start, when they run the numbers, they'll see that it's almost always a better option for you to have credit issued to you than have the house bought at a lower price. The math that I've seen with it is, for every $1 of a price reduction, or every $1 of credit issued to you, it could equal $3 of a price reduction. So that means $10,000 of credit can be the same as $30,000 less on a purchase price, right? Like, that's big stuff. And so with that kind of broad estimated figure, let's get into two exact opportunities that you can do with the seller credit, other than getting your closing costs covered, which is still really important because now you have more liquid savings for emergencies, right? And this is one of the things that I have to deconstruct with first-time buyers as well. It's like, okay, what do you think is a safer play for you? A payment that's $50 less a month, or having $10,000 in your bank account? Which one of those two things do you think is going to save you from bankruptcy if you lose your job? Right? Like, so there is a massive value.
Man.
What'd you say?
The $50, man.
There's a massive value, right, in getting your closing costs covered. So that's first and foremost is an obvious. But other than that, there's two rate options you can have. The first is called a seller buy down strategy, which I know Brian educates extremely well on this. It's pretty much using the credit to permanently buy down the interest rate. That's great, right? If you are high, like low risk, very high anxiety person, that might be the best option for you. It might not make the most sense, CENTS, but it might make the most SENSE sense so that you could just have peace of mind. And sometimes that's more valuable. What I would argue is better, and Brian, I don't know if we are aligned in this, but I think the temporary buy down is better. And what that means is that you take that same seller credit, and instead of applying it to a permanent rate buy down, what takes place is you take that money and it gets put on a side account for you. And that side account pays your mortgage payment, a part of your mortgage payment for you for the first year. It's a bigger chunk. And in the second year, it's a lower chunk. And you could even do a 3-2-1 buy down as well for some, right? But the principle is part of your mortgage payment gets paid, and it's as if you got a way lower interest payment. The reason why I like this better than a permanent buy down, and some people go, well, the temporary buy down is really, really bad because, you know, at that point you're stuck. What if rates go back up, blah, blah, blah. There's some truth to that, and there's a risk there. But my favorite piece about the temporary buy down is if rates go down, which we're already seeing happen, right? Inflation is already moving towards the better way. And, you know, I think time is just going to be able to confirm that even further. But if rates go down and you're going to refinance with the seller buy down, remember, there's not really a lot of interest rate deductions from a tax benefit. So the seller buy down, it's like you spent all that money to get a payment lower for maybe 8 months until you refinance. Might not be the most profitable. With the temporary buy down, that money that was set aside for you goes towards your next loan. So you don't lose that money. So your seller is effectively paying for part of your mortgage payment and a massive part of your refinance potentially later on too. It's a better win from somebody who's more comfortable with higher risk. So that's two of the big opportunities with the seller credit that you can utilize outside of closing costs right now.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's important for people to understand about them is they're not bad or good tools necessarily. They're different tools, and you have to look at it in the context of what is the market like today, and what are the expectations going forward, and what is your risk tolerance? Because you know, a lot of times we would be looking at the permanent buy down as a good solution in a market with a low interest rate because we anticipated rates being higher in the future. So that permanent buy down sounds really good because it's going to be forever.
Yep.
In this market today, not so much. You know, we're at the highest point that we've been almost in 20 years. And so we anticipate things are going to go lower. So why not get a little bit of relief from the crunch of inflation and the cost of everything else in the short term, but not have that sunk cost of that permanent buy down? Like you said, that money's sitting in a side account. If you refinance early and you didn't use it all, you get applied to your loan. So you didn't lose that money. It's not a sunk cost. It's not an expense. So it's
a couple other things
circumstances
to throw out there to that latter point on the temporary, right? Especially if we're looking at those who they hear that and they go, but I'm still super anxious. Cool. Now let's look at your debt. If you're saving $400 for the first year, let's do a snowball effect and have you pay down debt and see that if by the time year 2 comes around and your payment now goes up to the higher amount, which we already know what the higher amount's going to be. So it's not like an ARM, right? That can potentially be a lot higher for the first year. It's not going to have that type of movement, but it's one of those that we know what the mitigated risk is. We know what the exit plan is. So can we get your debt to be in such a line that by the time your 2 years is up, let's say worst case scenario, you never refinanced, your actual cash flow and budget stays the same because you paid that down. And don't forget, inflation also causes the cost of services and goods, which usually will make your salary go up. Or maybe you are in a point in your career where you know it's going to go up later on. There's so many other variables that change that if we get out of human nature of thinking that all variables are fixed, and we start understanding that life brings different modifications and we need to include those as we plan, that temporary buy down could be an amazing piece. And if you strategize appropriately, you could really make it an even more mitigated opportunity for you to save more and get all the benefits you can in the short term.
I think the main takeaway that I take from talking to you is that people need to have a good advocate and a good educator on their side when they're making these decisions.
Yeah.
If somebody is listening to you and they think, hey man, this Sosi guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
First of all, thank you. If you think that, I always want to appreciate those compliments because I'm really grateful to be able to see the investment bring a great return and we get to have a good impact on the community. Instagram is one of the bigger focuses of myself, my content, my team. It's at Mortgages with Sosi is the handle. If you'd like to see the YouTube stuff, you can go to asksosi.com and my YouTube channel is there as well. But DM me there, do some comments. If you want to play devil's advocate, please bring good topics to the conversation. Always excited to have good conversations about topics that will help people make better decisions.
And so if there's an old person like me that wants to call you on the rotary phone, how do they call you?
Our cell phone, or my cell phone, is 949-791-7429. You could also find it in my bio, on my Instagram, or go to teamsosi.com and you can see our information there as well. We are available via snail mail if you want to go that far back, emails and text messages. Will probably be slower to respond to the snail mail because I don't check that enough. But yeah, whatever means of communication other than smoke signals and pigeons, we're all down for.
I'm going to send you a stone tablet in the covered wagon. It'll be there in about 6 weeks.
Yeah, unless there's a burning bush next to it, I might not pay attention.
Well, hey, brother, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you'd like to leave people with? The last parting thought is words of wisdom.
I just want to make sure to acknowledge you, man. You were such a great impact for me to help give myself a break and get past some fears and truly just take a bet on myself. Seeing your belief in me, even at the start of my career, was extremely encouraging. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing what you do in lives like myself. And thank you for putting on a type of content and media here that can help others as well. And there goes my camera for some reason.
We can still hear you. What happened to that?
Beautiful. I have no clue. It seems like technology today is not our friend.
Sounds good. That's what happens when you get on a podcast with an old guy. Somehow he screws up the technology.
Your energy came across the screen and there's the camera.
He's back.
Cool. Oh, well, there it goes again. Well, I think on that note, I might have my cameras telling me to get the heck off.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and appreciate the kind words, and you continue to inspire me. So I thank you for that. And take care, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on the latest episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Make sure you check back next week. We'll have another one. We'll see if Sosi can fix his camera by next week.
Have a good one, guys.
Thank
you so much.
Thanks for joining us, and please remember to go and subscribe, like, share, all that cool stuff to help us grow, and come back to listen to our next episode. Until then, go out and live life uncensored.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to help us out and subscribe. Follow and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out on YouTube for the full video podcast. If you want more information on any of the topics discussed on today's episode, email us at uncensoredrealestatepodcast@gmail.com or give the Cardenas Mortgage Team a call at 480-331-4684.